everyone, and welcome to the special 325th edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and please subscribe. And also, please download this episode and subscribe, and also give a 5-star rating for this podcast if you listen to any of our audio channels. 325, guys. Thank you guys so much for everyone who have listened to me along the way. And thank you so much to the incredible guests that I've had for the past episodes, and to also the publicists. Thank you so much for trusting my brand with your clients. And I hope there's 325 more episodes. That'll be 650. That would be amazing. Alrighty, guys, for this 325th anniversary episode, I want to bring up one of my favorite Disney aficionados. He is a Disney park aficionado. As of this recording, he has over 8,370 YouTube subscribers, and his content has been watched over 530,000 times on YouTube, and has nearly 15,000 followers on Twitter. So please help me welcome Drew the Disney Dude to the podcast.
Woo, that's me. What's up? What's up?
Hi, Drew. Thank you so much for coming on this special milestone episode.
Well, thank you for having me on. Like you said, I'm always open to talking about Disney, especially with all the news we just got. So looking forward to talking to you today about everything.
Oh my God. Tell me about it. It looks like several franchises are going to be flexing their muscles finally after all these years of begging us.
Yeah, it's some of these announcements, I'm like, is this actually happening? But it is. So it's going to be fun to spend the next, 5 years covering all these projects.
Absolutely. So let's start at the very beginning. So when did you get interested in Disney, Drew? And how did that passion involve and desire to pursue a career as a content creator?
Yeah, so I mean, my love for Disney starts all the way back when I was a baby. My dad took me on It's a Small World for the first time when I was 2 years old. So I like to say that that's where my love for Disney started, back when I was, just coming onto this planet. And then growing up next to Disneyland, when I was a kid, definitely helped. And once my family moved out to Dallas, Texas, we lived out there for about a decade, coming out to Walt Disney World because it's a shorter, plane flight, and just we grew up next to Disneyland. So whenever you go to Texas and then you have Walt Disney World, it's easier to access. So Walt Disney World was definitely like the main place that we started to travel to, and then eventually ended up moving out here. Now we've lived out here for 6 years. And I think just being at the parks kind of led to me starting to share what I like about the parks. And I've always liked to share news and updates because that's, the new stuff that everyone's interested in. So kind of having the opportunity to share stuff in the parks on top of all the stuff that Disney's announcing, like what we just got with, D23 Expo, all that stuff combined, it's kind of turned into a happy accident because I never expected it to turn into what it is now. But to now have 15,000 followers on Twitter and to be able to share things from the parks and what Disney is doing and announcing, like I've said a few times, having the next 5 years set up now and another 5 years after that for this next decade where they're going to be spending $30 billion on the cruise ships and the parks. It's very exciting times ahead.
Absolutely. It's a very exciting time to be a Disney fan, especially with some of the announcements. But before we get to those announcements that were covered at D23, I would love to talk to you about some of your favorite Disney parks attractions and why do they stand out?
Yes. Yeah, so right now my current favorite one is Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which is not going to come as any shock to anyone who has been following me over the last, 9 months. But I grew a very strong emotional attachment to Tiana's Bayou Adventure just from documenting it at Magic Kingdom. At the time of this recording, I've been to Magic Kingdom 70 times this year. So the majority of those 70 visits was specifically for Tiana's and to document the construction. And just from documenting all of the construction with Tiana's, I mean, like I just said, I've grown a strong emotional attachment to it, and I've gotten to new cast members and Imagineers, and sharing all those things online, and then starting to meet people at the parks who followed my stuff online. I mean, just all those things, coming together, and then finally being able to go on the ride for the first time, and then actually loving the ride. Because I was covering it, but I didn't know what it was going to be. But then actually getting to go on it and then loving it is pretty cool. And that first ride was definitely one of my favorite Disney memories. Looking forward to this moment for so long while I was covering the construction, and then going on it was an absolute blast. So I definitely am heavily biased towards Tiana's just from my personal experience. But I know that that's unique compared to the average guest, just grabbing a boarding group and going on a random day in, September, for example. But there are a lot of other attractions that I love. I think my second favorite attraction all time would be Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I am a massive fan of Runaway Railway. specifically because the main Imagineer that worked on Runaway Railway, Kevin Rafferty, he's my all-time favorite Imagineer. He's retired now. My current favorite Imagineer is Ted Robledo, who's the creative director of Tiana's, and he did all of the expansion stuff over in Tokyo. So I think that he's starting to build his resume right now to maybe become a Disney legend one day. But like I said with Railway, Kevin Rafferty, no one ever talks about Kevin Rafferty and his impact on Disney, but his impact is incredible. He worked on Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster, Muppet Vision, Toy Story Mania, Runaway Railway, Cars Land. He's done so many things that he's not necessarily attached to in the public eye and perceived in how these attractions, came to be. But without him, we wouldn't have these things. Tough to Be a Bug, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. He's done all these things. These are all, for the most part, pretty low things. But Runaway Railway, it's pretty cool that was his last attraction that he did, and it's Mickey Mouse. And I love Runaway Railway just because of the vibe that it has. It's such an upbeat, happy experience, and it got an original song, and the original song is all throughout the attraction, and how they worked with, the teams like Chris Willis, who did all the Mickey Mouse shorts music. So I love Runaway Railway because of all the, connections it has to the Walt Disney Company, Walt Disney himself loving trains. So Tiana's and Runaway Railway, definitely a few of those for sure. But I'd say my number 3 favorite attraction would be Toy Story Mania. I'm definitely, I like to think about things on a deep level and try to figure things out. So that one kind of came naturally to me, just to wanting to get high scores. And I remember the first thing that I did when we moved out here was wanting to get a 500,000 point game on Toy Story Mania. So I was around like 300,000 points at my best games when we first moved out here. And then I went on it over 100 times to get a 500,000 point game. But just the competitive side of me, I loved arcades. I used to do arcade videos on YouTube before I switched to Disney content when we moved out here. So kind of combining the Disney theme park ride, Kevin Rafferty worked on that one too, with, Toy Story, one of my favorite, Pixar franchise. Toy Story Mania is definitely one of my favorites for all those reasons. But yeah, my top 3 would be Tiana's, Railway, and then Toy Story Mania.
You picked some really cool rides, and I'm looking forward to riding Tiana, and I loved Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway when I went on it, Disneyland last year. It was wonderful being in Toontown riding it. And also for mine, I would also add Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, one of my all-time favorite road thrillers. Like, you don't know how that mountain can be. That mountain cannot be contained. And speaking of mountains, the Matterhorn is another one of my favorites, all-time favorites. And then most recently, Rise of Resistance, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and that is probably one of the best Disney rides of the late 2010s, early 2020s.
100% agreed. Yeah, Rise of the Resistance is, I love Rise, but I think that, like I said, a lot of my favorite attractions, it's because of personal things to me, and that's the exact reason why you love what you love, right? But Rise, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like no matter how many times you go on Rise of the Resistance, you're never going to fully be able to process what they did with that. And like, I think they said that there's like 5 million lines of code that are all talking to each other with the ITS and the ride system itself. It's a masterpiece of Imagineering, and just seeing something like that, I hope that same level of quality and detail is what we get with these next projects coming up.
And speaking of those next projects, a majority of those next projects were revealed at the legendary Disney 23 Expo. So you covered the 2024 Disney Expo, and what was your before you got there, you made a prediction video. So what were some?
Yeah.
Did any of your predictions came true? Why? And what were you satisfied with the predictions that came true?
Yeah, so I think it's funny because like that, I did a predictions video like you just said, and in that video I was actually saying a lot about how at the time, this was long before the showcase happened, and I was very wrong on it. But Disney's language was saying that they were going to be making like a musical showcase, and the language and wording that they were using was concerning me because I wanted this showcase to be full of announcements, which we ended up getting. But before that, I was concerned that they were going to be making this too much of a show and a performance rather than a presentation, if that makes sense. But I'm very glad that I was wrong. So like in the sense of the overall video saying that I was worried about how they were going to do it, I was wrong about that. And I'm very glad I was wrong about that. Usually with the information and stuff that I share, I want to be accurate because I'm sharing content to thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But with that one, I was kind of like, hey, I don't want everyone's expectations to be up here. I don't want anyone's expectation to be down here. I just want to set like a realistic expectation. Like I said, though, very glad that I was wrong on the overall thing because it turned out to be the best thing that they've ever done, announcements wise. But in regards to like the specific announcements, I think the main thing that didn't get announced that I was hoping for. So I was wrong on it for now. I still wholeheartedly believe this will happen in the next 5 years. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Disney is doing 10 years of investments into the parks. My understanding is that 10 years starts with the beginning of fiscal year 25. So this will be going all the way through 2034, this next decade. And what they just announced a month ago at D23 is for the next 5 years. So what I believe right now is that all of it will be done over the next 5 years, and then we're getting another 5 years of massive announcements right after. So it's going to be back-to-back, half decade for this insane investment in the parks. But I think the one thing, like I just said, that will happen on the second half of this decade is a Moana ride. I was pretty confident that they were going to announce this at D23, but we didn't get it. I think the main rumors kind of floating around have been a boat ride at Magic Kingdom as an expansion of Adventureland, or some sort of Moana land at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So that didn't get announced now, so I was wrong on it for the time being. I do think that will happen, though, on the latter half of this decade, though. I mean, especially if Moana 2 coming out. If this movie makes over $1 billion, which I very well think it will, if not, 1.25 billion, like we've seen with Deadpool and Inside Out. I mean, Inside Out's almost at 1.7 billion. That's just insane. But Moana, I do hope happens eventually. I think it will. But with the things that did happen, so the thing with me about rumors is I try to be very careful about how I talk to them, because I don't want it to come across as a leak, because I try to be respectful of the hundreds and hundreds of people at this company who are pouring their time every single day into making these projects a reality. And I never feel that it's my responsibility to leak that when they have these expos and showcases to do that, right? That's why I always will come across as, hey, this is a rumor. It might happen, it might not, because I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, this is happening, and then have Walt Disney Imagineering have their own reveal ruined. But the things that I kind of knew were coming, and then to see those like confirmed on stage and to be there in person, it was like, yes, it's always nice to get some accurate stuff. But the thing for me personally that I'm most excited for, that I got accurate in the predictions video, was the Walt Disney animatronic. I think that that's one of the most significant investments ever in the history of this company. Having a Walt animatronic is just incredible, especially since Walt Disney himself started the audio animatronics, with the Enchanted Tiki Room. So now that the technology is so damn good, it's like, why not bring Walt to life? And I've seen some people talking about, like certain members of his family not being on board, but like, I don't necessarily agree with that, because his great nephew is on board with it. And also the fact that Walt himself brought, people back in forms of animatronics, with Abraham Lincoln, right? And I think that the coolest thing about Walt being like one of the main reasons why the Abe Lincoln animatronics exists is that this new Walt Disney show, the Walt Disney Magical Life show with the Walt animatronic, is going to be playing in rotation with that. So there's so many full circle moments here, from Walt founding animatronics to this technology being where it is today, to it playing along with the great moments with Mr. Lincoln show. I think that that's a really, really good investment, and it kind of shows that, sometimes people will say that, executives at this company don't care about Walt Disney. Personally, I've never understood that argument. I mean, yes, a lot of change happens, and sometimes change can be perceived in a way that some people will think that. But Walt Disney himself said that these parks are never going to be a museum. So, I mean, if people are going to quote Walt, then you have to look at all of them, not just, specific things that kind of form a narrative, right? I think the other thing that I was very glad to see announced that I believed was coming was The Lion King to Disney Adventure World at Disneyland Paris Resort. That was a big one that I had heard floating around. It was kind of like a very bad kept secret. But I was told ahead of time that, yeah, this is going to be announced. And sure enough, we got that, ride that looks very reminiscent of, the Splash Mountain kind of facade. So the Pride Rock, it looks very similar to it. But I mean, you can never go wrong with the thrilling, log flume with A1000 animatronics. And I know for a fact that this Lion King ride is getting those A1000s. So definitely happy about that. Think that there were some other things that I kind of knew that were floating around that I didn't necessarily talk about in that video. I'm trying to think of, I know for a fact I talked about the Walt animatronic and the Lion King. So I would definitely say that those are the two of the main ones. But there were things floating around like the nighttime parade coming to Magic Kingdom. We got that. I had heard right before D23 that I was very skeptical on it, that there was a Coco thing planned for Disneyland. And then I saw Ernesto walk on stage at the showcase. I'm like, all right, that's happening now too. But sometimes I think it's better to not talk about, everything, because like I said, I'm very aware and cautious of Imagineering, working on these projects for sometimes half of a decade. So I don't want to be, that person to go and leak everything. And that's why it's very important to talk about things as rumors, because plans change. And I always want to be understanding of who's putting their time and effort into these things, and not to just run around and run with info like I'm the greatest thing on the planet when I'm not by any means.
Absolutely, absolutely. I got to say this. Those are really good things that to come. I know a lot of people were complaining about in the log and flume rides. I'm like, okay, yes, there's a lot of them, and I got to say that it was great hearing the Disney animatronic because we need to have Walt's legacy intact, especially the man that created the entire entertainment industry empire. And I
Yep.
think I'm so glad Mr. Lincoln is being saved, because the thing is, Mr. Lincoln, President Lincoln, was the first one of the very first animatronics,
Yep.
and to have him, and I think it'd be blessed, and I think we would see the same intensity that we would see with Splash Mountain being rethemed if they ever decided to get rid of Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah. You can't get rid of those things, and that's why I'm glad that they're doing the exact opposite, and not only investing into the great moments with Mr. Lincoln's show. I'm assuming they're going to be doing like audio updates, lighting updates, just refreshing everything, because when you're putting Walt Disney with anything, that's where the stakes are going to be the highest out of anything. So to see that they're using archival recordings of Walt and doing this in, I think, the best way that they possibly could, I think that at the time when they decide to reveal this Walt figure, which Disneyland 70th is next year, and the 70th itself isn't until July, but I have a very strong suspicion that we're going to see things start happening around the 70th, in spring, maybe March or April. So I think around maybe December, we could start seeing some of these reveals just come out of nowhere, on their social medias or Disney Parks blog. But whenever that happens and we get that first look at Walt, I think that's going to be one of those things that kind of it breaks the internet in a sense, because that's going to reach, far beyond this community that we have. And that'll be all over the internet on every corner. So I'm looking forward to that day, and I'll know I'll be looking back on this conversation once it happens.
Absolutely. And speaking of Disney 70th, I really hope and pray that it follows the happiest homecoming on earth format, because when I remember that specifically, it was my second trip to Disney World in 2005 with my family. And I was so enthralled by everything that came in. We had soaring in Epcot. We had the Cinderella's castle with the mirrors from all of the castles from all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
We had I really hope and pray that Bob Iger and Josh and the entire Disney Imagineering team uses this Disney 70th land anniversary to do that, because a lot of people, including some of my favorite Disney commentators, such as Diz Unplugged and Denny Summerly, have always said how we're a little disappointed with Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary.
Yep. Yeah, I think that I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, so I feel like every decade, Disneyland 60th was massive, right? I mean, with this, it's like we're back on track now. We're out of COVID. There's no more holding things up, kind of like what you hinted at with Disney World's 50th. So if they really want to go all out, and I feel like the best park to go all out for is Disneyland, because that's Walt's park. So not only do you have the Walt animatronic, but you're celebrating, Walt Disney as a whole in the sense. So why not go all out with every single resort? I mean, if we got stuff at Walt Disney World, I think that's cool, because you're celebrating something that, was Walt's vision. Walt Disney World was brought to life, through, Roy Disney once Walt passed away, sadly. But like all of this started with Walt, like you said, with this, themed entertainment empire, and it led to everything that we have today. So why not? It benefits everyone, right? For the people who were just coming to Walt Disney World that's during that time and who aren't going to be able to go out to Disneyland, that makes their trip better. So even like little simple things, they definitely go a long way. And I mean, from Disney's perspective, I feel like it makes sense because this stuff reaches social media so easily now, right? When everyone has a phone and they can just take a video or a photo and throw it up online in a few minutes, I feel like they get that return on investment, especially if you're hitting more parks than just Disneyland. If you're going around the world, then you're literally getting a worldwide reach celebrating Disneyland. And I think that would be a very appropriate and a great way to honor Walt's legacy for sure.
Absolutely, 100% with you on that. I really hope Disneyland 70th is great and everything. But however, we got to do something, because we got to talk about the biggest shock that fans have had, that everyone talked about, was when the magic mirror suddenly appeared and it reminded Josh of an empty promise that he once had. Disney 23 all those years ago, and officially that Villain's Land is not just coming, but it will be at the Magic Kingdom near the end of 2026, 2027. So what was your reaction when Villains Land was finally revealed to be at the finale of the
Yeah, that was one of the, like, I think kind of like a summary with this is like definitely like live posting when I was at the showcase. I was there as media. I went into this thing. I want to share the best, quickest, most informative updates out of anyone. That was my goal going into it. I'm glad that I was able to do that because, like, with like the Wi-Fi and stuff, I'm like, there's 12,000 people in here. Is that gonna happen? But thankfully, there was solid enough Wi-Fi to where I could post, and that was, I can confidently say that was the most fun I've ever had in an in-person event out of anything I've ever done before. But like, Josh was wrapping up and I'm like, damn, that was really good. Like, kind of like taking a deep breath in. And I was, on my phone like nonstop. Like, I didn't really get to enjoy it, but I'm okay with that. I just wanted to share the stuff because I know that if I wasn't there in that room, I would want someone to be sharing updates like I was doing. So I was taking myself out of it and just doing things for, the internet. But whenever I saw those flames, just shoot up out of nowhere, I vividly remember I was like, I got to get a picture of that. And it's funny, one of the pictures I have, one of the flames was like blocking Josh. So all you can see is the flames in the mirror. Josh, it wasn't even visible. But I knew that whenever that happened, that Villains Land was happening for sure. Like, there was nothing else that it could be. So I put out on Twitter a picture of that and I said Villains Land in all caps with like 5 exclamation marks. And that was before where he said it was coming to Magic Kingdom, but like we knew it was coming to Magic Kingdom at that point. Like, there's no Monsters Inc. had already been announced for studios at that point. So I know that there were some rumors floating around for, villains coming to studios, but I'm like, at this point, it's got to be Magic Kingdom. But that was so cool. And I really did like how they incorporated the music into the announcements and how it actually all felt very cohesive. Like I said at the very beginning of this, I was concerned that it was going to be so much focus on music that the announcements were going to be overshadowed by that and we were all going to be disappointed. I was so wrong. But like you said, the villains thing, it's like, it's crazy to have that confirmed. The thing about the villains area that, like, I'm a little bit hesitant on is that, is it happening? Is it greenlit? Is it going to be funded and built within the next 5 years? Yes. No questions asked. The thing is that this reveal came with a very early blue sky piece of concept art. So, well, it's happening, and the plans are being drawn right now. The concept art they showed us doesn't really tell us what it's going to be. Like, yes, is the Maleficent, castle layer thing going to be a part of it? In that piece of concept art, that seems pretty likely. Like, there's some things in this concept art that probably will happen. But like, once we get the final concept art where it's actually like set in stone, it's not going to look anything like this one piece. But Josh in person on stage said that there's going to be 2 major attractions. So I'm hoping that these are 2 incredible e-tickets and they are going all out to the level that we know and love over at Tokyo Disney Resort, right? Like with Fantasy Springs, where we have seen Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey, one of the greatest flume rides ever done. Like, that ride is insane. I feel like we can confidently say that from the videos because it's a very bright attraction and the animatronics and, not to go off on a tangent about Tokyo, but like, Villains Lane needs to be on that level, right? So when Josh is saying that there's 2 major attractions coming to Villains Land, my hope is that we get an incredibly well-themed coaster that's, well over 2.5 minutes long, kind of winding throughout the entire land. I mean, that was shown in the concept art, but again, that concept art is blue sky, so you can't really take that for what's going to be happening. But then the other thing, it's like, is a Villains Land going to be successful if we don't get a groundbreaking, innovative, full-on e-ticket with animatronics of Maleficent, and Hades and all these incredible villains? Like, I feel like Villains Land could be disappointing if we don't get that e-ticket along with it. But we don't really know what's coming here, right? Like, they're saying, yeah, we're getting 2 major attractions, we're getting shopping and we're getting dining. You can kind of imagine what the shopping and dining is going to be because, like, I mean, how much can you do with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for example, the meet and greets started. Like, the meet and greets, you could have the Evil Queen, Cruella, Maleficent, the Tremaines, Jafar, Hades, and maybe even Captain Hook and Facilier walk around. And maybe you might even have like special times like the Sanderson sisters at Halloween. Same with the Headless Horseman.
Exactly.
And a Buggy.
Yeah, so it's like there's a ton of potential here, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because, like, I feel like the one thing that a lot of people agree on within the Disney community is that one of the main mistakes with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was that, the timeline blocked a lot of these characters out from coming, Star Cruiser and like this very specific timeline. But like with the Villains Land, if this is kind of just like a place where all the villains come together and you literally just have, like with what you just said, you just have these villains wandering, like that will be incredible. That will be something that people will fly around the world to come experience.
And I'm so sorry, Drew.
No, you're good.
I really hope and pray that they follow the Disneyland rulebook of the villains, because we've seen so much virals with the Evil Queen and Maleficent and Cruella and the Tremaines all working their magic around. And I was able to get selfies with almost every one of them before I left. Like the Evil Queen and Maleficent. And like, you need to have, like, for example, I want to have the Evil Queen roast me say, "You didn't bow lower."
Yeah.
Or like, I want to say Maleficent, say, "Your Grace," I want, like, say, I wouldn't leave without saying hello to you, Your Grace, or something like that. Or like even Jafar, or like, I would also love to see some of the villains come, like villains that we haven't seen, like Horn King would be fabulous. And like Hans, and then
there's so much potential. It's crazy.
And here's the thing, I gotta say this. I think without Dark Universe and the Epic Universe from Universal, we would not be getting the Villains Land.
Agreed. I think that we would have gotten it eventually. But I definitely think that like when they had initially kind of teased the villains at D23 in 2022, I don't think that they were expecting to greenlight this, within 2 years of that. And that's definitely a good point to make, is like Dark Universe and, Epic Universe as a whole. A lot of people view this as a competitive thing. I view it in the exact opposite light. I think it's a great thing because we're benefiting from it, right? Like you just said, we probably wouldn't be getting Villains Land right now and that Villains Show at Hollywood Studios right now without, Epic Universe. So it's a great thing. We have Epic Universe, this 100-acre park. That's going to be fantastic, for everyone to experience. And then we have, Disney stuff coming right after for the next 4 years, after 2025. So it's not, from the companies, it might be viewed as competitive, but for us as the consumer, it's a massive win. So I look at this from along the lines of, we win from it. So why would I, view it in a bad way? This whole Disney versus Universal thing is ridiculous, in my opinion. I'm like, good, we get Universal, who is on an incredible level of themed entertainment now. Like, they have kind of caught up. And we get all this incredible stuff from Disney. So heck yeah, you guys keep going at it, and I'll continue to enjoy everything that you all are putting out.
I agree. And I also got to say this. I'm very excited because, especially when in Universal, we've heard rumors that Mila Stoughton is going to play Dolores Umbridge one final time in the Harry Potter ride. I really hope and pray, if I was Bob Iger and tomorrow, I would sit down with the agents of like Glenn Close to play as Cruella, Lana Parrilla as Regina the Evil Queen, and maybe Jonathan Freeman's Jafar, and and Angelina Jolie's Maleficent, or maybe Kristen Chenoweth if you can't get her. Like, play those villains one more time, or Queen Latifah as Ursula, or something like that to play. Because the thing is, I think that would make villains great if they had like an interaction with these villains. Like if they do a screen, because I know everyone's terrified of the screen, but if you can do properly and bring those characters, especially Bette Midler, SJP, and Kathy Najimy are walking at the heels for some kind of Hocus Pocus 3, but seeing all three of them would be in this Villains Land, and like in this Villains Encounter maze or something like that, or even get Christopher Lloyd as Judge Doom for one final time. That's potential. Like, yeah, it costs money to get all these actors, but I think the fans would have so much fun like saying like with the villain interaction.
Agreed. And that's I think that's another good point to make, is something that I necessarily haven't thought about, is like, how are these villains going to be brought to life, right? Like, we've seen Disney work very closely alongside, Walt Disney Animation Studios. So are they going to be using, the digital media to bring them to life through, original, hand drawn or 3D animation? Or would it be with these, actors and actresses, like, reprising their roles? And then you have like the animatronics, to where they could literally create these characters in the real world for the first time and kind of bring them off the page and off the screen. And I know that those would probably go down as the most, beloved animatronics of all time. I feel like that those would be like the most breathtaking, like just seeing an A1000 Maleficent, with flames going around you, maybe as you're launching on a roller coaster or quickly moving through a scene on a dark ride. Like, that stuff would be mind blowing and would, go so viral online. It wouldn't even be funny. But I definitely think that that's an interesting conversation to have, is how are these villains going to be brought to life? Is it going to be through, the actors and actresses reprising their roles? or will this be through animatronics and animation? Personally, I would prefer the animation because when I think about these villains, I think about the original films. But I also know that there's a massive audience for those characters who likes them through, those people playing them. So that'll be very interesting too. But that's the thing, is kind of like I hinted on, we don't know what this is going to be yet. So it's like, is this going to be an 8-acre area, in Magic Kingdom, and like the current footprint of where the back half of the Rivers of America is? Yes, but how are they going to utilize that space to make this something that's worthwhile? Because like if you look at like, even the Tropical Americas, Dinoland right now is 11 acres. So like the Tropical Americas is bigger than Villains Land, which is crazy to think about. But again, it's just, like how they're kind of keeping everything in the boundaries of Magic Kingdom where the train track is, and using the land that's more suitable right now. I totally understand that. But again, it's like, could you maybe expand one day beyond the train track to have something else? This is Villains. You can't mess this up. You have to get this right. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they kind of reveal this stuff and if it lives up to our expectations, because it has to be right. You can't backtrack on this. It has to be an insane investment, Tokyo level, groundbreaking rides, and hopefully we get some stuff that's loved by everyone, where there's no negativity. That's my hope.
And one more thing with the villains, I implore them to make sure that they go outside the box, or something like Ursula and Scar, two massive villains that can be walkabouts. Because the thing is, those are the most popular villains of two of the biggest franchises. And not having them there is very shocking, especially Scar running around. Like, it'd be nice seeing Scar and Hyenas if you can use a little bit of combine both Disney Imagineering with some of Julie Taymor's designs. That would be epic. And for Ursula, I gotta say, it'd be really cool to have a cast member as Ursula who can play the Queen, either that could channel their inner Pat Carroll or their Queen Latifah version.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And I know you mentioned it earlier, but like again, we have Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party in Magic Kingdom too, right? So like, could that have played into their decision to bring villains to Magic Kingdom, because they know that they can turn Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party into this massive thing that like people, like right now, like would I buy a ticket to Not So Scary? Probably not. I love Not So Scary, but I don't think it's worth, $170, on some of these days when it gets closer to Halloween when you want to go. But like, if they make Villains Land something with Not So Scary, where it's like everyone wants to be there for that, because you have everything going on in the party, and then you can walk into the back left corner of Magic Kingdom and you have Villains Land during a Halloween party, like that's, nobody would want to miss that. So how are they going to incorporate, villains into Not So Scary? And could that have played into decision making, to do this now to make, even more money off their investment? I think it's wholeheartedly possible.
Absolutely. It's definitely something like, and like the thing is, same with not just with Mickey's and the Villains Land, but also not the Dark Universe and Halloween. Imagine you're in the home of the Universal Monsters during Halloween, their Halloween Horror Nights, and like that's a medium size for both kids and teens. So that way, the kids are not terrified of what's going on at Universal Orlando. They could easily have that. They can be able to be scared, but at the same time, people to enjoy themselves too. And I really think Disney should not up the ante. Like, yeah, you can have the witch. Like I know in Disneyland Paris, they have the really great cast member as a witch, terrifying every kid. But at the same time, like you can have that as well.
Yeah. Speaking about Paris, I think I forgot the character's name. Is it Melanie Ravenswood? I think from Phantom Manor. I've seen her over there, and like so good when they like that level of detail. If we get those characters in Villains Land, this could go down as the greatest thing ever done by Imagineering.
And I also hope that they also take notes from their Disney California counterparts, especially with the Oogie Boogie, because you have Sid, you have Madame Mim, you have Pete Lagatha, you have Hades, Hades, which is wonderful. But you had these characters do that, because the thing is, you could easily do all that with the Villains Land.
Yes. Yeah, but again, we don't know. So that's kind of like, it's so exciting to get this announcement, especially now. I wasn't expecting it now. I was expecting this maybe in 3 years from now. And for construction to start, maybe by the end of this, by 2030. But, with Epic, opening summer of next year, they went for it. So now it's a matter of, are they going to get this right? But I do like that it gives me some hope when Josh says that they're going to have two major attractions. To me, that doesn't seem like one E-ticket and one D-ticket. That seems like two E-tickets. But Villains deserves two E-tickets. It deserves an incredible roller coaster, and it deserves an incredible Rise of the Resistance level dark ride. And if we get those, and we get the themed dining, and we get the shopping with those unique items that actually, to where it's like a lot of the merchandise now you can find it at so many stores, and it's like, why am I going to the store? Like, what's unique about it? But if we get those actual unique things when it comes to the merchandise, and then we get the actual unique themed dining with villains in there, and villains walking around in that ambiance, and where it actually feels like you're back there where you don't want to leave, like you said earlier, I think it's going to be a real winner. But that's what I expect. I don't doubt them. I think they're going to get it right here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, many fans are like some of the older veterans have been sad about the Rivers of America declosing, and also not to mention Frontierland expanding into a new different era, especially with Splash Mountain being over with. So is it, how difficult is it to have those thoughts? Like, you be excited, but also sad at the same time that some classic elements of our park that have been there since opening day are leaving?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, like, I'm very, very sad to see the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island go, because those are areas that aren't appreciated enough. And I said on Twitter a year ago on my birthday that it was that at the time, after I had gone over there for the first time in recent memory, that Tom Sawyer Island was now my favorite spot in Magic Kingdom, because it's a top tier hidden gem. It's one of the last remaining areas that you can kind of just escape from everyone and just enjoy the park for a park. It's called Magic Kingdom Park, right? That is the theme park part of it. But when you're kind of ripping that out, it's like, how do you get it right to kind of save what was once there? Not that, because like the thing with me about the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island is I'm not necessarily against them going. I'm just, at the time right now, without us knowing even anything about this Cars area, like, what is the approach that they're coming at it from? If Josh had announced this part on stage, which he didn't, which I'm not a huge fan of, they kind of hid behind it. But like, if Josh had come out on stage and said, "Hey guys, I want to be transparent with all 12,000 of you in here right now. I know that what I'm about to announce is going to, be very kind of like half and half. Like, people are going to be mixed on this. But, as chairman, I believe I want to be transparent with all of you. So I've made the decision to greenlight this project, and it's going to be replacing Tom Sawyer Island and Rivers of America. But I'm going to bring Bruce Vaughn out on stage right now to talk about it." And then if they'd shown, some inspiration pieces of what they're going for, and kind of said, "Hey, this is going to be a full-on national park," like Yosemite National Park, or even Grizzly Peak over at Disney California Adventure, and kind of leaned into what it was going to be, and just be transparent with your audience, right? And that's what kind of killed me, is like, we had Deadpool at D23, right? And Deadpool's making all these jokes about the Yeti being broken in Everest, and the dragons catching on fire in Festival of Fantasy and Fantasmic, and they were literally making fun of themselves. So that was like the most personal we'd seen the company in a long time, and everyone was laughing. Like, it was great. Like, being in that environment, like those things, that's why I'm saying it was my favorite thing in person. So like, for them to be so personal about that, and to be so open and kind of poke jokes at themselves, and just, Josh had said it on a podcast recently with Lou Mangello, who's Lou is one of the veterans. He's fantastic. But Josh said that he wants people to know that there's people, behind the scenes doing all these things, right? And that came across very clearly with Deadpool. But then whenever they don't talk about the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island being replaced until 36 hours later, and just drop it on Disney Parks blog post, and we're left with more questions than answers, that's what I don't like personally. Just be open. Like, if you're going to get rid of it, you're going to get rid of it. You've already greenlit it. You're funding the project. It's going to be built starting early in 2025. It's gone, right? Just tell us, is this going to be a national park? Like, what is it going to be? Are we going to have geysers popping up out of the ground in these incredible, overlooks? Like, I was just talking to a friend and mentor the other day, but like, if the current like launch area for the Liberty Bell turns into kind of like a scenic overlook, as if you were at like Lake Tahoe, for example, and you can see the entire area with the cars racing through and geysers and all this original rock work, like, that would be beautiful. But we don't know if that's going to happen yet, right? So when we're left with more questions than answers, it spirals, and that's what causes this feedback on social media. So I just want them to be open and communicate with us, and I think that will go a long way throughout this entire project, and not just this project, but everything else.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, you bring up a great point, because the thing is, another of extremely important property to a lot of fans, the Muppets, and fans are
Yeah.
and content creators are terrified that this area, the last area that Jim Henson did before he passed away, is in
Hmm.
grave danger.
Yeah. So my thoughts on Muppets is, it's like, just dropped this incredible documentary. I haven't watched it yet personally, but I'm assuming it's incredible because it's about Jim Henson, right? The Jim Henson ID Man on Disney Plus. Like, there's even a poster for that outside of Vision 3D at Disney Hollywood Studios right now at the time of this recording. So it's like, can you say that the Muppets are important to this company, from the Walt Disney Archives to what Jim Henson did to, like, what you just said, with this being the final film that Jim Henson directed and performed in as the voice of Kermit, and then get rid of it? It's like, personally, I know a few people have already talked about this, but this is not just me taking that idea. I personally believe this because of the concept art that we got. So the concept art that Disney officially released, there's 2 different versions and variants of the Monster Inc. Monstropolis, Disneyland coming to Hollywood Studios. One of them looks like it's replacing Muppets, but if you look at that concept art, there's the artist's signature. It says it was done in 2020. But the other one looks like it's going to Animation Courtyard. So the reason why I think that we don't know where this area is going yet is because I firmly believe the Walt Disney Imagineering actually has plans developed, one for the Muppets replacement and one for Animation Courtyard. And I think that the reason why Disney might not have announced where it's going is because they actually wanted to see the fan feedback. And that might lead them to putting it in Animation Courtyard over Muppets right now. The thing is, though, I do not think the Muppets are safe for this next decade of, the investment that they're doing. Even if Muppets survives Monstropolis, I don't have any inside information on this. This is 100% speculation. I'm not going to pretend I know. I do personally think that it's going to go into Monstropolis, into Animation Courtyard. I don't think Muppets are going right now. But even if Monsters Inc. Land takes over Animation Courtyard, they demolish the buildings back there and they do the right thing for now, I think that this next 5 years, after the current 5 years, the back half of this decade of investment, I don't think the Muppets are going to survive that. Now, some people could say that, if Muppets survives for 5 more years, then that might be a reason to keep it, because at that point it's been around for 5 years longer and, more people experience it. And this is kind of like the first time where the fans have kind of felt that it could be going away for real. But like, I'm thinking about, what does Disney have planned for this next 5 years after now, I don't know about yet. And if Disney has a plan to do something in Animation Courtyard for that next 5 years that we don't know about yet, then that's why they might save it. There's a lot more here that people aren't talking about. It seems like everyone's just focused on this first 5 years. But Disney has very clearly said that they're doing $30 billion for parks and cruise ships over the next decade. And this is just the first 5 of those. I know I've said it so many times, but it's very important to remember that while they are doing these things right now, there's going to be plans and concepts being designed probably as we speak for what's coming later on down the road. So if they have plans for Monstropolis for both Muppets and Animation Courtyard, and there's even, early concepts for something that could be coming to Hollywood Studios 8 years from now, what do they do, right? So I think that the reason why they're being very silent on it is because they haven't made the decision yet. And another thing that kind of leads me to believe with that 2020 concept art being, real, like they had the plans for Muppets in 2020 and they could have announced this at any time, is if you look at the concept art for the suspended roller coaster, like that, the ride vehicle design is final. Like that piece of concept art is clearly based off of a final concept where you can see the lap bars, you can see, the laugh canisters at the top. That is done. Like that's probably been done for a while now. So I think it's just a matter of, what does Disney have planned for, what's coming closer to 2020, 2032 or 2034? And if they want to save Animation Courtyard for longer down the road, personally, what I hope they do is put Monstropolis and Animation Courtyard, save Muppets for now, and then maybe, later down the road, get rid of Star Tours and the Indiana Jones Stuntacular. Realistically, I don't think that those attractions are going to live much longer, the next decade, and then just use that space for Neverland. I don't think there's rid of the Muppets, because it's up a decent amount of space, but it's like, it's the Muppets. Everyone has loved the Muppets, even now more with social media. I feel like the Muppets are becoming even more and more popular with social media, And especially in the fact, like you said, it's Jim Henson's final thing. So why would you get rid of that? If it was 10 acres, I would understand it, but it's not really a massive space. Just keep it. And then take out the other stuff. I mean, Millennium Falcon Smugglers runs kind of Star Tours in a way. But that's my take on it.
And I gotta say this. It would be wonderful, a few of them, since they've used Kermit and Piggy in the holidays, that would be probably the most epic meet and greet. Where would be people lined up to meet a Kermit, a Piggy, a Gonzo, a Fozzie, a Rolf, an Animal, a Janice, a Scooter, a Bunsen and Beaker, all 10 of them rotating in and out. Because I think those were the 10 most popular Muppets, and plus Statler from Waldorf, so 12. And have them rotate in and out with the Muppeteers, and have cast members do that, because that will be a wonderful thing, because just those social media would go wild with that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think there's another thing too with the whole Little Muppet Courtyard area, is that right now Disney, like you kind of said, they're choosing not to do stuff in that area. Like the Muppet Courtyard feels very underutilized and kind of abandoned, because like the Stage One Company store, like they don't even use that as a store anymore. It's only used for like May the 4th or like a special event during Jollywood Nights, for example, or something. And even like Pizza Rizzo. Like Pizza Rizzo is fun. I love it in there, but like no one's ever in there, and it closes at like 5 or 6 o'clock every night. And like Mama Real Rosa's, restaurant, like no one ever talks about it. But I think that Disney actually has a golden opportunity to kind of like relaunch Muppets Courtyard by, what if they turned the Stage One Company store into a permanent Muppets meet and greet area, like completely retheme that entire building. You could even use a virtual queue system for the meet and greets, right? Because there's not a ton of space back there. And then give Mama Melrose's, turn that into character dining, give it a brand new menu, make people want to go there. They could even do something at Pizza Rizzo with Rizzo going in there, meeting guests. Like, give us a reason to want to go back there. And if you give us a reason to want to go back there, and it starts, trending on social media, and people start going there again, then you really have no reason to get rid of Muppets Courtyard. And they could even remaster Muppet Vision, right? Remaster Muppet Vision, relaunch it, go all out on social media, and they could literally do it themselves. If Disney's going to say that there's no demand for this area, a lot of that's on them. People love the Muppets. Just give us a reason to talk about it. And if we talk about it, then there's no reason to get rid of it. That's what I believe.
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. I really hope they listen. If Josh D'Amaro and his team are listening to this podcast, please take our ideas in consideration, because the Muppets are so generational and intergenerational, and everyone would have. And I know a lot of people would revolt if Kermit, Piggy, Gonzo, Fozzie, and Animal and the gang are not at Hollywood Studios anymore, because they would not be. A lot of people would not be very happy. Sad.
Agreed. And another thing too is like, not to go on a Muppets rant forever, but like these are things that I want to talk about. I just don't get to talk about them. So being able to talk to you about it is nice. But like the Muppets are under Disney. It's not like it's this third party thing where they don't want to, pay the licensing to anymore. Like Walt Disney Imagineering has full control of the Muppets. Disney Live Entertainment has full control of the Muppets. So why would you get rid of your own IP, which goes against everything that they've been doing as a company, right? Like Rock and Roller Coaster, for example. My personal expectation is that Rock and Roller Coaster will be reimagined as a part of this 5 years. We just don't know about it yet. I think what's going to happen is that if I had to take a wild guess right now, I think that Monsters Inc. Miniland opens summer or fall of 2028. And then once you have a new coaster at Hollywood Studios, then you take Rock and Roller Coaster down, because you have that capacity and you can reimagine it to either your own IP or something original. It would probably be an IP with how the company is now, we all know that. But like getting rid of that makes sense, because it's not Disney's IP, and Aerosmith, they're not even touring anymore, right? Like Steven Tyler just had a vocal injury and they're done. So that would make sense, especially after you have a Monsters Inc. coaster online. Like that would be great for capacity if they do a standby line, because people being in a standby line takes people out of walkways, and that'd be nice. But the Muppets is Disney. So why would you get rid of your own IP, especially when people love it right now on social media? I don't see it happening, at least right now. But if it survives this 5 years, then I hope that it would survive the next 5 and the next 5. And, it becomes untouchable, which I don't like using the word untouchable anymore, because it doesn't seem like anything's untouchable anymore. I mean, Splash Mountain's gone, and the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island are about to be. But I think you can kind of see where I'm coming from with that, right? Don't get rid of your own IP. just doesn't make sense.
And plus, and also we have one more family that is part of Disney now, thanks to Fox, The Simpsons. And we know that Universal's rights are slowly dwindling. Something tells me The Simpsons may find themselves in Hollywood studios one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. I mean, I think a dark ride with, animatronic Simpsons would be cool. And I feel like The Simpsons is like that one Fox property that could kind of fit into Disney, right? Like we've seen like Star Wars and Marvel kind of like fit in now, and people associate them with the Walt Disney Company brand. And I feel like if there's any franchise that would kind of fit in, it would be The Simpsons and Ice Age. Like those are the two that kind of, I'd be like, I could see that happening. But yeah, why not, right? There's so much space at these parks. I mean, I'm kind of even like concerned one day about Fantasmic. Like, I love Fantasmic,
one of the
and I think
greatest shows
that's
of all time. It is probably one of the greatest.
It is. I don't think it is. I would say it is. Fantasmic is incredible, but like, there's a lot of land back there. Like, if they got rid of like the Beauty and the Beast stage in Fantasmic, like you could put 2 more lands in there. It's like, where do you draw the line? Do I want that to happen? No, I do not want that to happen. I love Beauty and the Beast.
Are 2 cornerstones to Hollywood studios, and
agreed.
I'm glad they re-upped it with Aladdin and Moana and Elsa and Mulan. But we need to see more villains. Maybe Facilier, or maybe have you with or have Frollo have Hellfire. Maybe have a wacky combination of Madame Mim and Hades.
Yeah, like, no, I wholeheartedly agree.
I don't
want that to go.
We need to extend the villain section a little bit, because the thing is, not having Frollo there, and maybe even have like something like a giant Ursula, or maybe having Hades walk on, and maybe a Madame Mim or something like that for comic relief. But having the villain section extended to match, not to bring in, because having Keith David do Facilier and just do Friends on the other side, like just transform how they transform so far to Facilier, and then go into Hades, and then bring in Chenbog, and then basically bring in Maleficent. That would probably be the best way to improve the villain section of Fantasmic. But getting rid of Fantasmic is a big slap in the face to Disney nighttime fans.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. But it's like my mind's kind of going like, what could happen now? It's like I never expected Splash Mountain or Tom Sawyer Island or the Rivers of America or Dinosaur to close, and they're all gone. So it's like, I don't want those things to go by any means. I love the Beauty and the Beast show. I've started to like it a lot more recently because I can appreciate it now. And I love Fantasmic. Like, that show is just, it's so good. But like, I mean, I like what you said about the villain stuff. I mean, something that we haven't talked about yet is that we're getting, that villain show at Hollywood Studios, which kind of came out of left field, that's replacing Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy. But I actually like that they're getting rid of Racing Academy to do this show, because I think that this villain show will tie into what we said earlier about those walk-around characters in the entertainment in Villains Land. And if this villain show coming to Hollywood Studios in summer of 2025 gets really good ratings, and it gets that good attendance like they're expecting and hoping, then I think that that's going to cause, that investment going into Villains Land will stay where they expect it to. And I also think it's good because that little racing academy right now, it's a valuable part of the park. It's far off, but I say it's valuable because if you have, a couple thousand people back there all day, then that makes the rest of Hollywood Studios more enjoyable by taking people into that part of the park where no one is now. So it'll be very interesting to see how, villain show kind of acts as a test they're kind of testing the water. When construction starting on Villains Land, they still have time to, adjust plans if needed. I really hope that people know that show is there, go over there and enjoy it, and we'll see what happens with that.
I know. We could talk Disney all day, but we got to start winding down our conversation. So, Drew, where can my audience find you on social media?
Yeah, so my main platform is X, formerly Twitter, at Drew Disney Dude. My thing on here says Drew the Disney Dude, but on X there's like a character limit for your username. So it's just Drew Disney Dude over on X. And then on YouTube, but like you said at the top of this podcast, on YouTube I am Drew the Disney Dude. On TikTok I'm Drew the Disney Dude, and on Instagram I'm Drew the Disney Dude. So X is the only one where it's shorter, but the other ones are all Drew the Disney Dudes. So find me.
Awesome. So, guys, if you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast, visit our channels on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Podchaser, Spotify, Spreaker, Jake Sick with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB, Now, are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. All Jacob Elyachar, JACOB, Want to find out what's going on with America's Got Talent? My take on a Disney 100 exhibition that's visiting Union Station in Kansas City. Visit jake-shake.com. Once again, jake-shake.com. Drew, thank you so much for being part of my 325th anniversary episode. And I would love to have you come all things Disney, talk all things Disney World as the projects are working on construction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been like my first big opportunity to talk about everything since it's been announced. So it'll be fun to come back on this conversation, once we start seeing some shovels in the dirt and some new things revealed. Hopefully what we talked about happens and Muppets doesn't go away. That's one of the big things there that I hope that we are right about. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Congrats on 325 episodes, and I look forward to coming back one day.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And for the 325th time, goodbye.